Police say they have finally put a name and a face to a monster who killed Pamela Moore. She was 16 years old when she was raped and murdered. And when you hear about her case, it's really hard to not think about a cold case in Kansas City also involving a 16-year-old who was raped and murdered. And this is Fawn Cox. There's DNA evidence from her attacker, but no advanced genetic genealogy has taken place yet. Her family is still waiting. What is that like when you see other departments using DNA in solving cold cases?
That's not fair. That's the first thing I think is not fair. I mean, I'm happy for these families who are getting that closure. But deep down, I'm kind of jealous.
Are you frustrated?
Very, very frustrated.
Fawn was 16 years old when an attacker snuck in her bedroom window. She was robbed, raped, and murdered. The case is so old, police have even released the crime scene photos. 30 years have rolled by. What do you think it will take to solve this case?
DNA, definitely. They haven't. I mean, there was no other evidence there. Whoever did it did a good job at taking everything with them. What they didn't take was DNA.
DNA testing could be the game changer. That's how cold cases, like the one in Illinois, are being solved across the nation. Departments turn to private companies for genealogy testing, meaning they find the relatives of the killer, then investigate their way backwards. It works. More than 90 cases have been cleared in the past 18 months, but not in Kansas City.
They do it all over the country. Why they're kind of holding back on this, I'm not sure. Only they know.
Why haven't you done advanced testing on Fawn Cox?
Yeah, it's a matter of funding.
Sergeant Jake Bikina says solving cold cases is a priority.
It's hugely important. Anytime somebody is walking around that commits any crime, much less a murder, and gets away with it, every day that makes our city less safe.
The department admits they are struggling to create a framework and find money for this advanced DNA technology.
We are fighting for a solution that can serve this family, but also the families of other victims to come.
So Fawn's family has now offered to pay themselves, but the department won't let them.
We would be very fearful of getting into a situation where if one family can pay for something and another family can't, then we worry a lot about that. We want to serve everyone equally.
What do you think when police say, hey, we can't take money from a family to pay for DNA testing?
We held these fundraisers for Fawn. It is not our money they're taking. It is money that was put forth by people who love Fawn and want to see our family get closure.
It's just like I gave my money for the Crime Stoppers, and they took it and held it and nothing come out, so they could send it back to me. But they didn't say anything like that they couldn't use it for to pay them. But I think whoever solves it deserves the reward.
Fawn's family says if a family can put money towards Crime Stoppers, why not this? They consider this advanced testing a scientific tip. That could mean everything. What would it mean if they could finally solve this case?
I'd be relieved. Relieved knowing that somebody is paying for what they took from us.
So how much money are we talking about? Well, right now it's $1,500 to get this process started, and you get a rough profile. That's ancestry, hair, eye, and skin color. And then for $3,500, you get the genetic genealogy report. That's all the relatives out there. It can take a tremendous investment by a department to track all of those leads. A department can also spend $1,680 to get a DNA mugshot, and that's where they take the DNA and predict the face of the killer. There has been some really good success with this. This is Ryan Riggs. He saw his face all over TV and social media, and he decided to turn himself in because he felt like it looked so close. He confessed to sexual assault and murder. Angie Racono, KCTV5 News. I'm at Whitechapel Cemetery, and this is where Fawn Cox is buried. She was just 16 years old when she was raped and murdered. Her family says they will pay for the advanced DNA testing, and a nonprofit has offered to do the same. But the Kansas City Police Department won't take either of their money. But here's the problem. The department doesn't have the money to pay for it themselves. Officials believe Fawn Cox was strangled in her bedroom between
I still believe deep down in my heart that if she were someone important, they would allow that family to use their money to pay for that DNA. Or that money would have appeared a lot quicker than 31 years later. If she was a governor's daughter, if she was the mayor's daughter, if she was a high-class lawyer's daughter, it would have been a bigger push to solve that. We were a lower-class family living in the hood, and here we are 31 years later when it could have been solved.
No one has been held responsible for what happened to Fawn Cox. She was robbed, raped, and murdered in her own bedroom while her family slept downstairs.
She just didn't get to grow up.
Fawn's little sister and dad can only guess at what life could have been like for Fawn. Maybe she'd be a mother.
I could see her being a police officer. She had the heart for it. She didn't let anybody push her around. That's why I don't think there was one person that could have held her down. It would have had to been more. She wasn't a wimp.
Fawn's family has posted billboards hoping for tips and raised money to pay for advanced DNA testing, which they believe will reveal the rapist and killer. Do you believe DNA is the key to solving this case?
Yes, I do. I've always believed that.
The Kansas City Police Department doesn't have the money for the advanced testing. It's not in their budget. But other police departments across the nation have figured out how to pay for testing, which is thousands of dollars. It started with the Golden State Killer more than 2 years ago. Police used a public genetic database to make a familial match, meaning they found his relatives and worked their way backwards to a suspect, then seized his trash, which revealed a perfect DNA match. Since that moment, more than 100 cold cases across the nation have been solved, 5 just this past June. It's answers for victims' families, children, women, men. Here is the visible accountability, mugshots of predators who police couldn't catch by simply using the free FBI CODIS database.
We need to see this solved. And money is their excuse? I don't understand it.
Fawn's family wants to pay. The department continues to say that's not how policing should work, and it's been a consistent answer. Why haven't you done advanced testing on Fawn Cox? Here we are asking questions in January.
Some of those things.
In March, we wanted to know, okay, so what's your plan?
We've continued to gather information on those, to talk about funding sources.
In June, we asked the police chief himself.
It's so hard. I understand the family. I want to get this moving. From a police department perspective, we try and treat every case the same.
Some outside departments have converted Crime Stopper rewards to pay for scientific tips. Others turn to outside nonprofit groups. But the Kansas City Police Department recently turned that down too.
It is frustrating. And again, I'm not bashing law enforcement either. I actually work in law enforcement and have been for 21 years. I get both sides. But this is such a solvable case. I cannot understand what the holdup is.
Della Williams is with Missouri Missing Law Enforcement Training Center. Normally, she's working on missing persons cases, but she's been quietly trying to help Fawn's family.
It is so solvable. They have evidence, they have DNA, and there's organizations who's willing to work with them to get it done.
Della thought she had the problem solved. An outside nonprofit agency agreed to pay for testing, but police once again brought up needing an overall program to test all DNA and not just pick one case.
Kansas City honestly is the most resistant we've had, as far as they have everything to solve something, they just will not.
Wow.
I thought it would be said and done. I just can't understand something like that. It seems like they'd be jumping for somebody to give them, to pay for it.
Do you see their point?
No, you have to start somewhere, one step at a time.
The family has a Facebook group where people can leave tips and post messages of encouragement. Lately, people post pointed questions.
They don't understand it. And I have to explain to them what I've been told, and they're just like, something's wrong somewhere. And the first thing they always come up with is, what are they hiding? Why are they not doing this? Why do they keep giving these excuses? I want to know.
The family has quietly questioned if maybe the DNA is simply lost.
1989.
The police department says that's not the case. There is viable DNA, and in the past, they have shown us evidence from that night. The question remains, when will it be tested? Fawn's parents say they'd like to see their daughter get justice before they die. Reporting in Kansas City, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
Live breaking news from KCTV5 News.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn Long. We begin today here with that breaking news. A 31-year-old Kansas City murder case has been solved with advanced DNA testing. We're talking here about the Fawn Cox case. She was just 16 years old when she was raped and murdered inside her own bedroom. Investigative reporter Angie Racono joins us now from the police department with some of the answers on this case, answers that have taken quite a while. Hi, Angie.
Hi, Carolyn. Those answers have taken decades, and in this case, these answers are incredibly heartbreaking. Police do have a genetic match, and the family of Fawn Cox has revealed that it is a relative. Donald Cox Jr., he is the cousin of Fawn Cox. So the family is very heartbroken about this, and they did tell me that Donald Cox was troubled.
It's a relief. There's closure. The answers aren't always what we were asking for, but there's closure.
The fact that it's someone that you know well and it's actually a relative, how is the family dealing with that?
I think we're doing okay. We're doing okay. Just having answers helps.
The family and police have always suspected whoever raped and killed Fawn knew her and knew the family's house, and that's because the killer knew how to climb up on the back porch and sneak in that second floor window. And the family always thought Fawn must not have initially recognized the danger because she did not scream that night. The family was home and they didn't hear anything, and they found her the next morning. Now, Fawn's family has always pushed incredibly hard for answers in this case, and they pushed for genetic genealogy. At one point, they offered to pay for it themselves, but this was actually paid for through a partnership between the Kansas City Police Department and the FBI, and it will be interesting to see what happens with other cases as we move forward, because this is the very first case solved with genetic genealogy in Kansas City.
Tonight, a local family finally has closure in the rape and murder of Fawn Cox. Fawn was only 16 years old when she was killed inside of her own bedroom while her family slept downstairs. This case has haunted Kansas City for 31 years, but now we have answers. Investigative reporter Angie Racono is live from the police department with the information released only a few hours ago. And Angie, this case has been one that you've been following for years now.
Yes, and we finally have answers. It comes in the form of DNA, and it reveals that the rapist and killer is Fawn's own cousin. Now, he's dead, so there won't be a trial, but this family finally has closure.
It's a relief. There's closure. The answers aren't always what we were asking for, but there's closure.
Today, Felissa Cox learned the DNA left behind at her sister's crime scene came from a relative.
We don't know why he did what he did.
Donald Cox Jr. died 14 years ago. The family calls him troubled.
Because they evolve. They touch, they rape, then they become murderers. So it doesn't surprise me.
Fawn's family always suspected she knew her killer. That's because they never heard her scream. And the killer knew how to climb up on the porch roof and sneak into the bedroom window.
We never stop.
For Kansas City police, this is a win. A case cleared and a chance to point out the importance of police funding.
It wasn't something we were able to do on our own, and less funding will only make that even harder.
The FBI did the advanced genetic testing in this case. Answers came in just weeks.
What do you think it will take to solve this case?
DNA, definitely.
KCTV5 did numerous reports on the Fawn Cox case as her family begged for advanced testing. At one point, they even offered to pay for it themselves. They also posted billboards asking for tips. Today's news means their fight finally ends.
Thank you so much. Just let it all go and keep her memory alive. That's all we can do.
This is the first case in Kansas City that is solved with genetic genealogy, and that's when police and detectives, they can't find a match in the criminal database, so they turn to a public database. They find relatives of the killer and they work their way backwards, but it is expensive. Reporting in Kansas City, Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
Thanks, Angie.